Have you ever noticed that the days which hurt you the most are the days that change you the most, yet those are the same days you wish never happened? A day where your heart feels heavy, your mind feels tired, and you quietly wonder why life keeps testing you when all you want is peace. But Buddhism teaches something shocking. It teaches that these painful days are not delays in your life, they are not punishments, and they are not signs that you are failing. They are the very moments where your inner strength is being shaped. And when you finally understand why bad days exist, you stop hating them, you stop running from them, and you begin to see them as silent teachers guiding you toward a deeper peace. 1. Bad days are part of nature, not a mistake. Most people believe that suffering comes from pain itself, but Buddhism teaches something far more important and far more freeing. Suffering actually begins the moment you believe that pain should not exist in your life at all. When a bad day arrives, the mind immediately goes into resistance mode. It starts questioning reality instead of understanding it. Thoughts appear like, "Why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong? Why can't my life just stay peaceful?" Or, "When will this bad phase finally end?" These thoughts may feel natural, but Buddhism explains that this inner resistance is what multiplies your pain. The bad day itself is only an event, but the refusal to accept it is what turns discomfort into deep suffering. Buddhism teaches that life is not designed to protect you from difficulty. Life is designed to move, to change, to rise and fall. When you expect every day to feel good, smooth, and under control, you are expecting something that goes against the very nature of existence. Nature itself is never fixed or perfect. The sky is not always blue, the ocean is not always calm, the weather does not ask permission before changing, and the seasons do not stay gentle forever. Storms arrive, winds become harsh, and darkness replaces light, not because nature is broken, but because balance requires change. Without storms, the air would become heavy. Without winter, the earth would not renew itself. In the same way, your life was never meant to be permanently peaceful or comfortable. Bad days are not signs that something went wrong. They are not proof that you failed, that you are unlucky, or that life is against you. They are part of the natural rhythm of being alive. Just as the heart beats by expanding and contracting, life moves forward through ease and difficulty. When you label bad days as mistakes, you turn natural experiences into personal problems. Buddhism invites you to see them differently, not as interruptions, but as necessary movements of life itself. When this understanding sinks in, something very powerful happens inside you. Your mind begins to relax. You stop seeing yourself as broken just because you are struggling. You stop believing that something is wrong with you because you feel tired, low, or overwhelmed. Instead of fighting the moment, you allow it to exist. This does not mean you enjoy pain or give up on growth. It simply means you stop wasting energy arguing with reality. You accept that just as night follows day without apology, difficult moments follow peaceful ones without warning. This acceptance does not make you weak, lazy, or passive. Buddhism teaches that acceptance is actually a form of inner strength. When you accept what is happening instead of resisting it, your mind becomes calm, even in discomfort. You stop panicking, you stop blaming yourself, you stop adding unnecessary fear to temporary pain. Acceptance allows you to move through the storm with awareness instead of drowning in it. You may still feel the rain, but you no longer believe the rain is there to destroy you. And this is the moment when bad days stop controlling you and start teaching you how to stay grounded, steady, and whole, no matter what life brings. 2. Bad days reveal where you are attached. Buddhism teaches that pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional, and the difference between the two lies in attachment. A bad day does not hurt you deeply just because something went wrong. It hurts because it touches something you are holding on to too tightly. When life does not move the way you expected, when people disappoint you, when plans fail, or when progress feels slow, the emotional pain you feel is not coming from the event itself. It is coming from the attachment you had to how things were supposed to be. Attachment does not only mean attachment to people, it also includes attachment to comfort, to control, to routines, to success, to validation, and to the idea that life should be fair and predictable. On good days, these attachments remain hidden because nothing is threatening them, but on bad days, they are exposed. Suddenly you feel anxious, frustrated, or empty, and you may not understand why such a small situation is affecting you so deeply. Buddhism explains that this is the moment when attachment reveals itself. For example, if your peace depends on people behaving a certain way, a bad day will arrive the moment they change. If your happiness depends on constant progress, a bad day will arrive when things slow down. If your sense of worth depends on external success, a bad day will arrive when you fail or feel left behind. The pain is not caused by the situation, it is caused by the silent belief that things must go your way for you to be okay. Buddhism does not see this revelation as a punishment, it sees it as awareness. A bad day becomes like a mirror, quietly showing you where your peace is fragile. Instead of asking, "Why is this day so hard?" Buddhism invites you to ask a deeper and more honest question. What am I clinging to that is making this moment painful? This question shifts your focus from blaming life to understanding yourself. When you see your attachment clearly, something important changes. You realize that your peace has been placed outside of you. You see that your calm depends on conditions, moods, outcomes, or other people's actions. This realization may feel uncomfortable at first, but it is incredibly freeing. Because once you see attachment, you are no longer controlled by it unconsciously. You gain the choice to loosen your grip. Letting go does not mean you stop caring or stop trying. It means you stop demanding that life behave a certain way for you to feel whole. You learn to participate in life without chaining your peace to results. As attachment weakens, bad days lose their emotional power. Situations still happen, but they no longer shake your inner stability. Over time, you begin to notice a quiet shift. You recover faster from disappointment. You stop overreacting to delays and changes. You stop feeling destroyed by small setbacks. Not because life became easier, but because your mind became freer. This is why Buddhism teaches that bad days are not your enemy. They are teachers that gently point to the places where you still cling, so you can slowly release them and move closer to unshakable peace. 3. Bad days train the mind to become strong and quiet. Buddhism teaches that a peaceful mind is not something you are born with, it is something you train, and this training does not happen on easy days. On calm days, when everything is going well, the mind naturally feels relaxed. There is nothing challenging your patience, nothing disturbing your emotions, and nothing forcing you to look inward. But this kind of calm is fragile because it depends on circumstances. The moment life becomes difficult, that calm disappears. This is why Buddhism does not measure strength by how you feel on good days, but by how you respond on bad ones. Bad days are the true training ground of the mind. When things go wrong, when emotions rise, when thoughts become loud and restless, you are given a rare opportunity. You get to observe your mind instead of being controlled by it. Normally, the mind reacts automatically. It judges, complains, worries, and creates fear without your awareness. But on a bad day, these patterns become very clear. You begin to see how quickly the mind creates stories, how it jumps into the future, how it replays the past, and how it turns one problem into many. Buddhism teaches that simply noticing this process is already a form of awakening. Instead of trying to escape the discomfort, Buddhism encourages you to sit with it gently. You learn to watch your thoughts without believing every one of them. You learn to feel emotions without letting them decide your actions. You learn to pause instead of reacting. At first, this feels difficult because the mind is used to controlling you. But each time you choose awareness over reaction, the mind becomes quieter, not silent, but less dominant, not empty, but more spacious. Over time, bad days stop feeling like chaos and start feeling like practice. You begin to recognize emotional waves as temporary movements rather than permanent truths. Anger rises and falls. Sadness appears and fades. Anxiety comes and goes. And you realize that you are not these states. You are the one watching them. This realization is deeply powerful. It creates a distance between you and your suffering. The mind may still speak, but it no longer shouts. This is how inner strength is built in Buddhism, not through force, not through suppression, but through patient awareness. Each bad day strengthens your ability to stay present under pressure. Each uncomfortable moment teaches you how to remain steady when life shakes you. Slowly, your reactions soften. You respond instead of react. You listen instead of fight. You breathe instead of panic. One day, you notice something surprising. Situations that once overwhelmed you no longer disturb you as deeply. Not because life became easier, but because your mind became trained. Calmness becomes something you carry within you, not something you wait for outside. This is the quiet strength Buddhism points to. A mind that has faced difficulty without running away becomes grounded, stable, and unshakable. And this is why bad days are not obstacles on the Buddhist path. They are essential teachers shaping a mind that remains calm even when the world is not. 4. Bad days teach you how to stand alone without fear. Buddhism teaches that some of the most important lessons in life can only be learned when you are alone, and bad days often create this space whether you want it or not. On difficult days, support may feel distant, people may not understand what you are going through, and even when others are present, you can still feel deeply alone inside. This loneliness can feel painful at first, and the mind may immediately label it as abandonment or weakness. But Buddhism sees this moment very differently. It teaches that this is not rejection, it is an invitation to develop inner independence. Most people move through life leaning emotionally on others without realizing it. They rely on attention to feel valued, on reassurance to feel safe, and on constant connection to feel whole. On good days, this dependence feels comfortable and invisible. But on bad days, when people are unavailable or when life forces you inward, this emotional dependence becomes obvious. The discomfort you feel is not caused by being alone, it is caused by not knowing how to be at peace with yourself yet. Buddhism teaches that bad days reveal this gap so you can learn to fill it from within. When you are left alone with your thoughts, feelings, and fears, you are given a powerful opportunity. Instead of escaping into distractions or chasing comfort from others, you begin to sit with yourself. You learn how to breathe through discomfort without needing immediate relief. You learn how to listen to your inner state instead of silencing it. This process can feel uncomfortable at first because the mind is not used to being faced honestly. But with time, something remarkable happens. The fear of being alone slowly fades. As you spend more time with yourself during difficult moments, you begin to discover an inner presence that does not disappear when others do. You realize that you can support yourself emotionally. You can calm yourself. You can reassure yourself. You can keep going even when no one is watching. This does not make you cold or detached from people. It makes you emotionally self-sufficient. Buddhism teaches that this kind of independence is the foundation of true freedom. Bad days also teach you how to walk your path without needing approval. When you are alone in difficulty, you stop performing for others. You stop explaining yourself. You stop seeking validation. Your focus shifts inward. You begin to understand your own values, your own limits, and your own strength. You learn that growth often happens quietly, away from attention and applause. This is why Buddhism values solitude, not as isolation, but as a space for deep understanding. Over time, standing alone no longer feels like punishment. It becomes a source of stability. You stop fearing moments when life pulls people away from you. You stop panicking when silence appears. You know that even in solitude, you are not empty. You are present. You are aware. You are grounded. Bad days teach you this truth gently but firmly. They show you that you can remain whole even when everything feels uncertain. This is the strength Buddhism points to. A person who can sit alone on a difficult day without collapsing, without escaping, and without losing themselves has developed a deep inner refuge. And once this refuge is built, no situation can truly take your peace away again. Bad days no longer break you. They remind you of the quiet strength you carry within. 5. Bad days remove illusions and false expectations. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering comes not from life itself, but from the picture we create of how life should be. From a very young age, the mind builds expectations about fairness, consistency, success, and happiness. You expect effort to always bring reward. You expect people to remain the same. You expect life to move in a straight line. On good days, these expectations feel true and comforting. But on bad days, when life does not follow the script you imagined, frustration appears, disappointment grows, and the heart begins to feel heavy. Buddhism explains that this pain is not caused by reality, but by the illusion you were holding on to. Bad days arrive like a mirror that shows you the gap between your expectations and the way life truly works. When something goes wrong, the mind often reacts by saying, "This should not have happened," or "Things were supposed to be better than this." These thoughts seem harmless, but they quietly turn natural challenges into personal suffering. Buddhism teaches that life is not obligated to fulfill your expectations. Life moves according to causes and conditions, not personal desires. Once you understand this, bad days stop feeling like betrayals and start feeling like honest reminders. One of the biggest illusions bad days remove is the belief that life must always feel good for you to be okay. When this illusion breaks, it can feel painful at first, but it is deeply freeing. You begin to realize that discomfort does not mean failure. Struggle does not mean something is wrong with you. A difficult phase does not mean you are going backwards. It simply means you are alive and experiencing change. Buddhism encourages you to see these moments not as interruptions, but as part of the path itself. Bad days also dissolve the illusion of control. Many people suffer because they believe they should be able to control outcomes, people, emotions, and circumstances. When control slips away, fear and anxiety rush in. But Buddhism teaches that control is limited, and peace comes from understanding this limitation rather than fighting it. Bad days gently but firmly remind you that life cannot be fully managed. When you stop trying to control everything, your mind becomes lighter. You respond more wisely instead of reacting out of panic. Another illusion that bad days remove is the belief that progress should always be visible. You may feel stuck, slow, or behind, and the mind may label this as failure. But Buddhism teaches that growth often happens quietly beneath the surface. Just as roots grow underground before a tree becomes tall, inner growth happens during unseen struggles. Bad days prepare the ground for wisdom, patience, and understanding. When you accept this, you stop rushing your journey and start trusting its timing. As illusions fall away, reality begins to feel less threatening. You stop demanding life to match your imagination. You stop comparing your journey to others. You begin to meet each moment as it is, not as you wish it to be. This shift brings a deep sense of relief. The heart becomes softer. The mind becomes more open. You realize that peace does not come from getting what you expect, but from understanding what is happening. In this way, bad days are not cruel. They are honest. They strip away false beliefs that keep you trapped in disappointment. They teach you to stand in reality without fear. And once these illusions are gone, life becomes simpler, lighter, and more real. You stop fighting what is and start walking with it. This is the freedom Buddhism points toward, a freedom that begins the moment you stop asking life to be different and start understanding it as it is. 6. Bad days pass, but the awareness they create stays. Buddhism teaches one truth again and again: everything that arises will eventually pass. This includes joy, pain, success, failure, comfort, and struggle. When you are in the middle of a bad day, it often feels permanent. The mind starts telling stories like, "This is how life is now," or "Things will never get better," or "I am stuck like this." These thoughts feel real because the emotion is strong. But Buddhism gently reminds you that impermanence is the nature of all experiences. No feeling stays forever, no situation remains unchanged, and no storm lasts endlessly. Bad days feel heavy because the mind forgets this truth. When discomfort appears, awareness shrinks, and the present moment feels overwhelming. But Buddhism teaches that if you slow down and observe carefully, you will notice that even within a difficult day, things are constantly changing. A moment of calm appears, then disappears. A wave of sadness rises, then fades. A thought comes, then leaves. Nothing is fixed, even when it feels intense. This observation alone begins to loosen suffering. While bad days themselves are temporary, the awareness you develop during them is lasting. Each time you face difficulty with mindfulness instead of panic, something inside you grows stronger. You begin to trust the process of life rather than fearing it. You realize that you have already survived many days you once thought you couldn't handle. This memory builds quiet confidence. You stop doubting your ability to endure. Buddhism teaches that wisdom is often born in moments of discomfort. When life is easy, there is little reason to reflect deeply. But when things fall apart, you begin to question, observe, and understand. You notice patterns in your thoughts. You recognize emotional habits. You become more aware of what truly matters and what does not. This awareness does not disappear when the bad day ends. It stays with you, guiding you through future challenges. Bad days also teach patience in a way no lecture ever could. When you cannot fix everything immediately, you learn to wait without despair. You learn to breathe without knowing the outcome. You learn to stay present without demanding answers. This patience becomes a deep inner strength. Over time, you stop rushing life. You stop forcing clarity. You allow things to unfold in their own time. This creates peace that is not dependent on certainty. As impermanence becomes clearer, fear slowly loses its grip. You stop being afraid of emotions because you know they will pass. You stop fearing difficult phases because you know they are temporary. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop catastrophizing. You meet challenges with calm awareness instead of panic. In this way, bad days become reminders rather than threats. They remind you that nothing lasts forever, including suffering. They remind you of your resilience. They remind you to stay awake and present. And once you truly understand this teaching, bad days lose their power to frighten you. They come, they teach, and they go, leaving behind a mind that is wiser, steadier, and more peaceful than before. 7. When you accept bad days fully, they become your greatest teachers. Buddhism teaches a simple but life-changing truth. What you fight will continue to control you, but what you accept will begin to transform you. Most people suffer deeply on bad days not because the day is difficult, but because they are at war with it. They wake up already tense, already frustrated, already asking why life is doing this to them. The mind treats the bad day like an enemy that must be escaped, fixed, or defeated as quickly as possible. But Buddhism teaches that this inner battle is where the real suffering lives. When you fully accept a bad day, not with resignation, not with hopelessness, but with awareness, something profound begins to shift inside you. Acceptance does not mean you like the pain or approve of what is happening. It simply means you stop arguing with reality. You stop saying this should not be happening, and start saying this is happening, let me meet it with clarity. This single shift removes an enormous amount of mental suffering. The body may still feel tired, the emotions may still feel heavy, but the inner resistance dissolves, and with it, the extra layer of pain disappears. Buddhism teaches that every experience carries a lesson, but lessons can only be received when the mind is open. When you resist bad days, you learn nothing from them. You only try to escape them. But when you accept them, you begin to listen. You notice what the day is asking of you. Sometimes it asks you to slow down. Sometimes it asks you to let go. Sometimes it asks you to rest. Sometimes it asks you to change direction. Bad days often arrive not to punish you, but to redirect you away from exhaustion, attachment, or imbalance you were ignoring. As acceptance deepens, you start to see bad days differently. You realize they are not random acts of cruelty. They are part of a natural teaching process. Just as a teacher challenges a student not to hurt them, but to help them grow, life challenges you through difficulty to mature your awareness. When everything is easy, the mind stays asleep. It repeats habits without reflection. But when a bad day arrives, the mind wakes up. It becomes alert. It starts questioning old patterns. This awakening is the beginning of wisdom. Over time, you may notice something surprising. The days you once feared become less frightening. Not because they disappear, but because you understand them. You know that a bad day cannot take away who you are. It cannot destroy your worth. It cannot erase your growth. It can only show you what still needs attention. This understanding brings deep inner stability. You stop collapsing emotionally when things go wrong. You remain present, grounded, and aware, even when life feels uncomfortable. Buddhism teaches that when acceptance is complete, suffering transforms into insight. A bad day becomes a teacher showing you impermanence, reminding you that everything passes. It shows you non-attachment, reminding you not to cling too tightly to comfort. It shows you self-reliance, reminding you that peace must be built within, not borrowed from circumstances. Each of these teachings strengthens you in a way no easy day ever could. With time, you may even feel gratitude for bad days, not in a dramatic or forced way, but in a quiet, honest way. You look back and see how much they shaped you. You see how they taught patience when you were impulsive, humility when you were proud, stillness when you were rushing, and awareness when you were unconscious. You realize that many of your strongest qualities were born in moments when life felt hardest. This is the moment when bad days truly lose their power over you. They no longer feel like threats. They feel like messages. They arrive, they speak, and they leave. You listen without fear. You learn without bitterness. You grow without noise. Buddhism teaches that this is the highest form of peace, not a life without difficulty, but a mind that remains steady no matter what kind of day arrives. When you reach this understanding, you stop dividing life into good days and bad days. You see all days as teachers. Some teach through comfort, some teach through challenge. Both are necessary. Both are meaningful, and both are guiding you toward deeper awareness. So the next time a bad day arrives, do not rush to escape it. Sit with it gently, breathe with it patiently, observe it honestly, ask what it is trying to show you. Because the day will pass, but the wisdom it offers can stay with you forever. And once you understand this Buddhist teaching deeply, you will no longer fear bad days. You will meet them calmly, knowing that each one is quietly shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more free. 8. Bad days quietly rebuild who you are from the inside. Buddhism teaches that life does not change you loudly. It changes you quietly, slowly, and often in ways you do not notice while it is happening. Bad days are one of the main tools life uses for this inner rebuilding. Most people think transformation happens through success, happiness, or achievement. But Buddhism points to a deeper truth. Real change happens when the ego is softened, when certainty is shaken, and when comfort is removed. Bad days create exactly this space. On a bad day, the outer world feels less reliable. Plans fail, energy drops, emotions feel heavy, and the mind can no longer maintain its usual stories of control. This is uncomfortable, but it is also incredibly important. Buddhism teaches that the ego depends on stability to survive. It needs things to go according to plan, so it can keep reinforcing its identity. When a bad day interrupts this pattern, the ego weakens. And when the ego weakens, awareness has room to grow. At first, this weakening feels like confusion or emptiness. You may feel lost, unmotivated, or unsure of yourself. The mind may say something is wrong, but Buddhism teaches that nothing is wrong. This is the old version of you loosening its grip. Just as a snake must shed its skin to grow, the mind must go through periods of discomfort to release outdated identities. Bad days are often the shedding process. They strip away who you thought you had to be. During these moments, you may notice that many of your previous desires lose their intensity. Things that once mattered deeply may feel less important. Goals that once defined you may feel distant. This can feel unsettling, but Buddhism teaches that this is clarity, not loss. When noise fades, truth becomes visible. Bad days remove distractions and force you to sit with what remains when everything unnecessary falls away. In this quiet space, something subtle begins to form. You start responding to life differently. You speak less, but with more meaning. You move slower, but with more awareness. You react less, but understand more. This is not depression or withdrawal. This is maturation. Buddhism teaches that wisdom does not announce itself. It settles gently into your behavior. Others may not notice it immediately, but you will feel it in the way your mind responds to difficulty. Bad days also rebuild your relationship with time. On easy days, the mind rushes forward, always chasing the next moment. On bad days, the mind is forced into the present because escape feels impossible. Buddhism teaches that this forced presence, when accepted, becomes a powerful teacher. You learn how to stay with a moment without trying to fix it. You learn how to exist without constant improvement. This teaches deep patience, not passive waiting, but grounded endurance. Over time, this endurance changes how you see life. You stop needing everything to make sense immediately. You stop demanding quick answers. You allow uncertainty to exist without panic. This is a major shift. Most suffering comes from the fear of not knowing. Bad days train you to live without full clarity and still remain calm. This skill stays with you permanently. Another quiet rebuilding happens in how you relate to yourself. On bad days, self-judgment often appears. The mind criticizes weakness, slowness, or emotional heaviness. Buddhism teaches that when you meet these moments with kindness instead of judgment, something profound happens. You begin to develop compassion for yourself, not the shallow kind, but deep understanding. You stop treating yourself like a problem to be fixed and start treating yourself like a human being to be understood. This self-compassion changes everything. You stop abandoning yourself when life gets hard. You stop turning pain into shame. You stop believing that strength means never struggling. Buddhism teaches that true strength is staying present with yourself even when you feel incomplete. Bad days give you endless chances to practice this loyalty to your own being. As this practice deepens, your identity slowly shifts. You stop defining yourself by moods, productivity, or outcomes. You stop saying, "I am failing," and start seeing, "I am experiencing difficulty." This separation is crucial. It means your sense of self becomes stable even when circumstances are not. Buddhism teaches that this is freedom. A self that is not constantly threatened by change cannot be easily disturbed. Bad days also refine your sensitivity to life. You become more aware of small moments of peace. A quiet breath, a simple meal, a moment of stillness begins to feel meaningful. When suffering strips away excess, simplicity becomes nourishing. Buddhism teaches that this sensitivity is a sign of awakening. You are no longer numb, you are present. Eventually, you may notice that you no longer fear bad days the way you once did. Not because you enjoy them, but because you trust what they do to you. You know they will slow you down, but not destroy you. You know they will challenge you, but also clarify you. This trust creates a deep sense of inner safety. Life no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like a teacher working patiently, sometimes gently, sometimes firmly. At this stage, your relationship with suffering changes completely. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You ask, "What part of me is being reshaped right now?" This question keeps you grounded. It keeps you engaged. It turns difficulty into participation instead of resistance. Buddhism teaches that awakening is not a dramatic moment. It is the accumulation of quiet understandings gained during ordinary suffering. Bad days are where these understandings are formed. They rebuild your perception piece by piece. They soften arrogance. They deepen humility. They strengthen awareness. They prepare you for peace that is not dependent on circumstances. One day, you may realize that the person you are now could not exist without the bad days you once tried to escape. Your calm, your depth, your patience, your ability to sit with uncertainty all came from moments when life felt heavy. This realization does not come with celebration, it comes with stillness. A quiet respect for the path you have walked. This is the final teaching. Bad days are not interruptions to your life. They are shaping it. They are sculpting your awareness slowly, carefully, and honestly. When you understand this deeply, resistance dissolves. Fear softens, trust grows, and life, with all its difficulty, begins to feel meaningful again. When bad days arrive now, you do not collapse. You do not dramatize. You do not abandon yourself. You stay present. You stay open. You allow the quiet rebuilding to continue. And in doing so, you move closer to the kind of peace Buddhism speaks of, not the peace of comfort, but the peace of understanding. 9. Bad days teach you how to live without clinging to life itself. Buddhism teaches that the deepest suffering does not come from bad days, painful events, or difficult circumstances. It comes from clinging to life as if it must always feel a certain way for you to be okay. Most people are not attached to objects or people alone. They are attached to feelings, comfort, stability, certainty, and the idea that life should continuously support their emotional needs. Bad days arrive to quietly expose this attachment and slowly loosen it, not to punish you, but to free you. When life feels good, the mind becomes attached without realizing it. You start expecting peace to continue. You begin believing that clarity should stay. You assume happiness is something you can hold on to if you do everything right. This attachment feels harmless on good days, but it becomes painful the moment reality changes. When a bad day appears, the mind panics not because something terrible happened, but because something familiar disappeared. Buddhism teaches that this panic is the sound of attachment being challenged. Bad days force you to experience life without guarantees. You wake up without certainty. You move through the day without emotional support from circumstances. You are asked to continue living without the usual rewards that keep the ego comfortable. This feels frightening at first, because the mind wants assurance. It wants meaning immediately. It wants answers now. Buddhism teaches that bad days deny these demands on purpose. They create a space where you must live without clinging to outcomes, explanations, or emotional relief. At first, this feels like emptiness. The mind may say you are lost, unmotivated, or disconnected. But Buddhism teaches that this is not emptiness, it is openness. It is the absence of false certainty. It is the moment where life stops being something you control and starts being something you experience. Bad days gently guide you into this space, where you are no longer holding tightly to how things should feel. As this process continues, you begin to notice a subtle change in how you relate to pain. Instead of immediately trying to escape discomfort, you allow it to exist. You feel sadness without needing to explain it. You feel heaviness without labeling it as failure. You feel uncertainty without demanding resolution. Buddhism teaches that this ability is a sign of maturity. You are no longer trying to fix life into a comfortable shape. You are learning how to live within its natural movement. Bad days also reveal how much of your identity was built on conditions. On easy days, you may feel confident, capable, and strong. On bad days, those feelings may disappear, and the mind may say you have lost yourself. Buddhism teaches that you have not lost yourself. You have lost the conditions that were temporarily supporting your identity. What remains is closer to your true nature. A self that exists even when emotions, motivation, and clarity are absent. When you stay present during bad days instead of escaping them, you begin to touch this deeper self. It is quiet. It does not need validation. It does not panic when things go wrong. It simply exists. Buddhism teaches that this is awareness itself, the part of you that watches experience without being destroyed by it. Bad days are one of the few times when this awareness becomes visible, because distractions are stripped away. Over time, this awareness becomes familiar. You stop identifying completely with moods. You stop believing every thought that appears. You stop defining your life by how today feels. This is a powerful shift. It means life no longer owns you emotionally. You participate in it, but you are not consumed by it. Buddhism teaches that this freedom is the foundation of peace. Bad days also teach you how to love life without demanding that it comfort you. This is one of the deepest lessons on the Buddhist path. Most people love life only when it is kind to them. When it becomes difficult, they resent it, fear it, or feel betrayed by it. Buddhism teaches that true acceptance means loving life even when it is uncomfortable, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, respectful way. You stop asking life to entertain you. You allow it to teach you. As this understanding deepens, gratitude changes form. You stop being grateful only for pleasure. You become grateful for awareness. You become grateful for clarity. You become grateful for the ability to stay present even when things are not ideal. Bad days cultivate this deeper gratitude because they show you that peace does not come from circumstances, it comes from understanding. Eventually, you may notice that fear of the future weakens. You no longer worry as much about upcoming difficulties because you trust your ability to meet them. You have seen yourself endure confusion, loneliness, and emotional heaviness without collapsing. This memory builds quiet confidence. Buddhism teaches that confidence rooted in experience is far stronger than confidence based on hope. Bad days also teach you humility in the healthiest way. You stop believing you are above suffering. You stop judging others for struggling. You recognize that pain is a shared human experience. This recognition softens your heart. It makes you more patient, more compassionate, and less rigid. Buddhism teaches that compassion grows naturally when the illusion of control fades. As attachment to comfort loosens, attachment to meaning deepens. You begin to value awareness over pleasure, presence over distraction, understanding over control. Bad days guide you toward this shift slowly, without force. They remove what is unnecessary and leave behind what is essential. One day, you may realize that life no longer feels like something you must survive. It feels like something you are learning from moment by moment. Even difficult days feel meaningful, not because they are enjoyable, but because they are honest. You stop resisting them, you stop dramatizing them, you allow them to exist and pass. This is the final transformation bad days offer. They teach you how to live without clinging to life's changing forms. They teach you how to remain grounded when certainty disappears. They teach you how to trust awareness instead of comfort. Buddhism teaches that this is liberation, not freedom from pain, but freedom from being owned by it. When bad days come now, you do not ask why life is unfair. You do not ask when it will end. You stay present. You stay open. You let the experience unfold. You know it will pass, but you also know it will leave something valuable behind. This is why, at the deepest level, bad days are not enemies. They are initiations. They quietly prepare you to live with wisdom, humility, and peace in a world that is always changing. And once this understanding becomes stable, you stop fearing life altogether. You walk forward calmly, knowing that no day, no matter how difficult, can take away the awareness you have cultivated. 12. Bad days teach you how to live without inner conflict. Buddhism teaches that the deepest suffering in human life does not come from events, people, or circumstances. It comes from inner conflict. Inner conflict is the constant war between what is happening and what you think should be happening. It is the silent argument inside your mind that says life must feel different for you to be okay. Bad days exist to expose this conflict clearly and slowly dissolve it, not through force, but through understanding. On bad days, inner conflict becomes loud. The mind resists reality at every step. You may feel tired, but believe you should be productive. You may feel sad, but believe you should be strong. You may feel confused, but believe you should already have answers. This gap between experience and expectation creates tension. Buddhism teaches that this tension is the true source of suffering. The bad day itself is only the surface. The inner disagreement with reality is what drains your energy. When you observe closely, you realize that most of your pain on bad days comes from sentences that begin with, "I shouldn't feel like this shouldn't be happening," or "I should be better by now." Buddhism teaches that these thoughts are not truths, they are habits. They are learned patterns created by a society that values constant improvement, constant happiness, and constant control. Bad days break this illusion by making it impossible to pretend that everything is okay. They force honesty. As you stay with a bad day instead of escaping it, something subtle begins to happen. You stop arguing with the moment, because arguing requires energy you no longer have. At first, this feels like giving up, but Buddhism teaches that this is not defeat. It is surrender. Surrender does not mean passivity, it means stopping the inner fight. When the fight ends, The mind becomes quieter. The body relaxes. Breathing deepens. You begin to experience the moment as it is, not as a problem to solve. This is where a profound shift begins. Without inner conflict, pain changes quality. Sadness is still there, but it is softer. Fatigue is still there, but it is less overwhelming. Confusion is still there, but it is not threatening. Buddhism teaches that pain without resistance is manageable, while pain with resistance becomes suffering. Bad days train you to experience life without adding mental violence to it. Over time, you begin to notice how much energy you used to waste fighting your own experience. You fought tiredness instead of resting. You fought sadness instead of allowing it. You fought uncertainty instead of accepting it. Bad days slowly teach you a new way of living, a way where you meet each experience with openness rather than judgment. This openness creates space. And in that space, peace begins to grow naturally. Buddhism teaches that inner peace is not the absence of pain, it is the absence of inner conflict. When conflict disappears, even difficult moments feel less heavy. You stop feeling like life is attacking you. You stop seeing yourself as broken for struggling. You stop measuring your worth by how you feel on a particular day. Bad days help dismantle this false measurement system. They show you that your value does not rise and fall with your mood. As this understanding deepens, your relationship with emotions transforms. You no longer label them as enemies or weaknesses. Emotions become weather passing through awareness. Some days bring storms. Some days bring clouds. Some days bring clear skies. Buddhism teaches that awareness is the sky itself. It remains untouched by the weather. Bad days help you recognize this directly because the contrast becomes undeniable. Another important transformation happens in how you relate to effort. On bad days, forcing yourself to be positive feels exhausting. Pretending to be okay feels dishonest. Buddhism teaches that effort without wisdom creates more suffering. Bad days invite wise effort instead. Effort that listens. Effort that respects limits. Effort that moves gently instead of aggressively. This creates balance. You stop burning yourself out in the name of improvement. As inner conflict dissolves, self-compassion grows naturally. You stop treating yourself like a project that must be fixed. You start treating yourself like a living being that deserves understanding. This compassion is not emotional softness, it is clarity. It allows you to see your struggles without hatred. Buddhism teaches that compassion toward yourself is essential for awakening because a mind at war with itself cannot be free. Bad days also teach you how to rest deeply, not just physical rest, but mental rest. You stop replaying the past. You stop worrying about the future. You rest in the present because that is the only place without conflict. Buddhism teaches that the present moment, when accepted fully, contains no problem. The problem always exists in resistance. Bad days strip away distractions and bring you back to this truth. Over time, you may notice that even on good days, the mind stays calmer. You no longer cling tightly to happiness. You enjoy it without fear of losing it. This is because inner conflict has softened. You no longer demand permanence from temporary experiences. Buddhism teaches that this non-clinging joy is far deeper than excitement. It is peaceful and stable. Eventually, you reach a stage where bad days no longer feel personal. You stop asking why life is doing this to you. You stop identifying yourself with the experience. You see the day clearly, but you do not merge with it. This creates freedom. Life continues to change, but your inner state remains steady. Buddhism teaches that this steadiness is the result of understanding, not control. Bad days have quietly taught you how to live without inner violence, without self-blame, without constant judgment, without endless resistance. This is one of the highest teachings in Buddhism. When inner conflict ends, suffering loses its foundation. At this stage, peace becomes your natural state, not because life is always easy, but because you are no longer fighting it. You move with life instead of against it. You allow days to be what they are. You respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. This is why Buddhism does not promise a life without bad days. It promises freedom from inner conflict, and bad days are the doorway to this freedom. They show you exactly where you are fighting reality. They teach you how to stop. And when the fight ends, peace begins, quietly, deeply, and permanently. 13. Bad days dissolve the false self and reveal who you really are. Buddhism teaches that the greatest illusion a human being lives with is the belief that they are a fixed self that must be protected, maintained, and defended at all times. This false self is built from memories, roles, expectations, achievements, failures, and stories the mind repeats about who you are supposed to be. On good days, this self feels strong and convincing. You feel confident, capable, and in control. But Buddhism teaches that this sense of self is fragile because it depends entirely on conditions. Bad days arrive to gently but firmly expose this fragility and slowly dissolve it. On a bad day, the image you have of yourself begins to crack. You may feel weaker than usual, less motivated, less certain, or less capable. The mind reacts with fear and judgment. It says you are losing yourself. It says something is wrong with you. But Buddhism teaches that this discomfort is not a loss of self, it is the loss of an illusion. The false self cannot survive when conditions collapse, and bad days are moments when conditions naturally fall apart. Most suffering comes from trying to protect this false self. You try to stay productive even when exhausted. You try to stay positive even when overwhelmed. You try to stay confident even when unsure. This constant performance creates inner tension. Bad days remove your ability to perform. They strip away your masks. They leave you face to face with raw experience. Buddhism teaches that this stripping is not cruelty, it is truth. When the false self weakens, something deeper becomes visible. There is still awareness present. There is still breath happening. There is still life unfolding. Even when motivation disappears, even when identity feels unclear, something remains steady. Buddhism calls this awareness. It is not a personality, it is not an emotion, it is not a role. It is the simple knowing presence that experiences everything. Bad days reveal this presence because distractions are removed. At first, meeting this presence feels uncomfortable because the mind is not used to existing without its stories. You may feel empty or undefined, but Buddhism teaches that this emptiness is not lack. It is freedom from false definition. When you are no longer trapped inside a rigid identity, you become flexible, open, and alive. Bad days introduce you to this openness by dissolving the structures you depended on. As you stop identifying completely with moods and thoughts, you begin to experience life differently. Emotions still arise, but they no longer define you. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer command you. You stop saying, "I am broken," and start seeing, "There is brokenness being experienced." This shift may seem small, but it changes everything. Buddhism teaches that liberation begins the moment you stop mistaking experience for identity. Bad days deepen this realization by making it impossible to pretend. On good days, the ego can hide behind pleasure and success. On bad days, it has nowhere to hide. When you remain present instead of escaping, you begin to see how thoughts come and go without your permission. You see how emotions rise and fall on their own. You realize that you are not creating these movements. You are witnessing them, This witnessing is your true nature. As this understanding stabilizes, fear of bad days fades completely. You no longer fear losing happiness because you no longer believe happiness defines you. You no longer fear confusion because you no longer believe clarity is who you are. You understand that all states are temporary visitors passing through awareness. Buddhism teaches that when identity dissolves, fear dissolves with it. Another transformation occurs in how you relate to effort and striving. The false self is always trying to become something. It wants improvement, recognition, certainty, and achievement. Bad days interrupt this endless becoming. They force stillness. Buddhism teaches that in this stillness, you finally experience being. You are no longer chasing a future version of yourself. You are simply present as you are. This presence brings a deep, quiet peace that effort can never produce. Bad days also dissolve comparison. When identity weakens, comparison loses meaning. You stop measuring yourself against others. You stop asking whether you are ahead or behind. Buddhism teaches that comparison exists only when identity is strong. When awareness becomes primary, each moment stands on its own. Life becomes personal, but not self-centered. You walk your path without needing validation. As the false self fades, compassion naturally expands. You stop judging yourself harshly, and as a result, you stop judging others. You recognize suffering without labeling it as failure. You see confusion without contempt. Buddhism teaches that compassion arises when the illusion of separation weakens. Bad days accelerate this process by humbling the ego and opening the heart. One of the deepest changes bad days bring is trust. Not trust in outcomes, but trust in awareness. You trust that no matter what happens, you can remain present. You trust that even when identity collapses, life continues. You trust that awareness does not disappear during difficulty. This trust creates unshakable stability. Eventually, you may notice that even the idea of good and bad days loses importance. Days simply happen. Experiences arise and pass. You remain present through all of them. Buddhism teaches that this is equanimity, not indifference, but balance. You care without clinging. You feel without drowning. You act without attachment. At this stage, suffering no longer defines your life. Difficulty still appears, but it does not accumulate. Pain passes through awareness without leaving scars of resentment or fear. This is not because you became numb, it is because you became free. Bad days were the doorway to this freedom. The final teaching is this: bad days were never obstacles on your path. They were the path. They were dissolving what was false, so what is real could be seen. They were loosening identity so awareness could breathe. They were breaking attachment so peace could remain. When this understanding becomes stable, life no longer feels threatening. You move through the world lightly. You meet each day without expectation. You allow joy when it comes. You allow pain when it comes. You remain present through both. Buddhism teaches that this is awakening, not escape from life, but complete intimacy with it. This is why, at the deepest level, bad days are sacred. They reveal what cannot be taken from you. They show you that beneath moods, roles, success, and failure, there is a steady awareness that remains untouched. Once you know this directly, nothing in life can truly disturb you again. 14. Bad days free you from emotional dependency and teach you true inner peace. Buddhism teaches that one of the deepest causes of human suffering is emotional dependency. Emotional dependency means relying on external conditions to feel okay inside. It means needing life to behave a certain way for you to feel calm. It means depending on people's moods, outcomes, success, validation, clarity, or comfort to feel stable. Most people do not realize how dependent they are until a bad day removes what they rely on. Bad days are not random suffering. They are moments when emotional depend how dependent they are until a bad day removes what they rely on. Bad days are not random suffering. They are moments when emotional dependency is exposed and slowly dissolved. On good days, emotional dependency feels invisible. When things are working, when people respond positively, when progress feels smooth, the mind feels safe. It believes peace comes from circumstances. But Buddhism teaches that this peace is fragile because it is borrowed, not built. The moment circumstances change, that borrowed peace collapses. A bad day arrives and suddenly you feel anxious, restless, empty, or unsettled. Buddhism explains that this discomfort is not caused by the bad day itself. It is caused by the sudden loss of emotional support you were unconsciously depending on. Bad days remove this support without asking permission. They take away reassurance. They take away momentum. They take away certainty. At first, this feels cruel. The mind reacts with fear and confusion. It asks how to feel okay without the things it relied on. Buddhism teaches that this moment is essential. It is the beginning of true freedom. When external support disappears, you are forced to discover inner stability. In the beginning, this discovery feels uncomfortable. You may feel emotionally naked, like something important is missing. The mind wants distraction, validation, or escape. But Buddhism teaches that staying present with this discomfort is the practice. When you do not immediately replace lost comfort, you begin to notice something subtle. Even without reassurance, awareness is still present. Even without certainty, breath is still happening. Even without emotional comfort, life is still unfolding. This realization is quiet but powerful. As you stay with bad days instead of running from them, emotional dependency begins to weaken. You stop expecting the world to regulate your emotions. You stop needing people to fix how you feel. You stop demanding that every day provide motivation or happiness. This does not make you cold or detached. It makes you emotionally mature. Buddhism teaches that maturity is the ability to experience emotions without being controlled by them. Bad days are where this ability is trained. Over time, you begin to experience emotions more freely. Sadness comes, but it does not destroy you. Loneliness appears, but it does not define you. Fear arises, but it does not paralyze you. You no longer panic when emotions change because you no longer depend on them for identity. Buddhism teaches that emotions are movements of energy, not truths about who you are. Bad days make this teaching real, not theoretical. Another important shift happens in how you relate to people. Emotional dependency often hides inside relationships. You may unconsciously rely on others to feel valued, supported, or complete. On bad days, when people are unavailable or distant, this dependency becomes painful. Buddhism teaches that this pain is not proof that you need others to survive. It is proof that you are learning how to stand on your own emotionally. As dependency dissolves, relationships become healthier. You stop clinging. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop fearing abandonment. You connect from fullness instead of need. Buddhism teaches that love without dependency is peaceful. It allows closeness without fear. Bad days prepare you for this kind of connection by teaching you how to be whole on your own. Bad days also free you from dependency on motivation. Many people believe they must feel motivated to move forward. On bad days, motivation disappears. Buddhism teaches that waiting for motivation is another form of dependency. Bad days train you to act with awareness instead of emotion. You learn how to take small, gentle steps without excitement. This builds discipline without harshness and progress without pressure. As this understanding deepens, you stop judging yourself based on productivity. You stop measuring your worth by how much you achieve in a day. Buddhism teaches that worth is not earned, it is inherent. Bad days strip away performance and leave you face to face with being. When you learn to respect yourself even on low days, inner peace becomes unconditional. Over time, emotional independence turns into emotional stability. You are no longer easily shaken by praise or blame. Success does not inflate you. Failure does not crush you. You experience emotions fully, but they pass through you instead of trapping you. Buddhism teaches that this stability is not suppression. It is freedom from emotional slavery. One of the most powerful changes bad days create is trust in yourself. You trust that you can survive discomfort. You trust that you can remain present without reassurance. You trust that peace does not disappear just because conditions change. This trust becomes a quiet confidence. You stop fearing life. You stop fearing difficult days. You meet them calmly because you know you are not dependent on them for your inner state. Eventually, you may notice that peace no longer feels fragile. It does not disappear when plans fail. It does not vanish when people change. It does not break when emotions fluctuate. Buddhism teaches that this peace is not something you created. It was always there, hidden beneath dependency. Bad days simply removed what was covering it. At this stage, life becomes lighter. You still experience difficulty, but you do not carry it heavily. You still feel emotions, but you do not cling to them. You still care, but you do not depend. This balance is the essence of Buddhist peace. The final teaching of bad days is this: they were never meant to comfort you, they were meant to free you. They remove emotional crutches so you can walk on your own. They dissolve dependency so peace can stand independently. They teach you that nothing outside of you is required for inner stability. Once this understanding settles deeply, you no longer fear bad days. You recognize them as moments of liberation. They come to loosen what binds you. They come to remind you of your strength. They come to return you to yourself. And when emotional dependency ends, peace is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you live, quietly, steadily, and without effort, no matter what kind of day arrives. 15. Bad days complete your freedom by teaching you how to live without fear. Buddhism teaches that fear is not created by bad days themselves. Fear is created by resistance, attachment, and the belief that something essential can be taken away from you. Most people live with an invisible fear running quietly in the background of their lives. Fear of losing peace, fear of losing control, fear of losing love, fear of losing identity. Fear of not being okay if things fall apart. Bad days exist to confront this fear directly and dissolve it through understanding rather than force. On the surface, a bad day feels like something going wrong, but at a deeper level, it is life asking a powerful question. What are you afraid of losing right now? When you look honestly, you often realize that the fear is not about the situation itself. It is about what the situation threatens. Comfort, certainty, approval, progress, image, or emotional safety. Buddhism teaches that fear always points to attachment. Where there is attachment, fear follows naturally. Bad days remove the illusion that safety comes from stability. They show you that life will always change, no matter how carefully you plan or how wisely you act. At first, this realization feels unsettling. The mind wants guarantees. It wants protection from uncertainty. But Buddhism teaches that true safety does not come from controlling life. It comes from understanding it. When you see clearly that change is unavoidable, fear loses its foundation. As bad days repeat over time, something important happens. You survive them. Again and again, you experience moments that once felt unbearable, and yet you are still here. you breathe. You move forward, you recover. This repeated experience builds a deep trust in yourself, not a loud confidence, but a quiet knowing. You begin to trust that no matter what arises, you can meet it with awareness. This trust weakens fear at its core. Buddhism teaches that fear depends on imagination. The mind projects pain into the future and creates suffering before anything has actually happened. Bad days interrupt this habit. They pull you into the present moment where fear has less power. When you stay with the present instead of running into imagined futures, you discover something surprising. The moment itself is often manageable. It is the story about the moment that creates panic. As awareness deepens, fear begins to change shape. It no longer controls your decisions. You stop avoiding discomfort at all costs. You stop making choices purely to feel safe. You start living with honesty instead of fear. Buddhism teaches that a life guided by fear is narrow and tense, while a life guided by awareness is spacious and free. Bad days push you toward this freedom by forcing you to face what you once tried to avoid. Bad days also teach you that nothing essential about you is fragile. Your emotions change, your circumstances change, your roles change, but awareness remains. Each time a bad day strips something away, you discover that you are still here. This realization dissolves the deepest fear of all, the fear of losing yourself. Buddhism teaches that when you know what cannot be lost, fear no longer has power over you. Over time, fear stops feeling personal. You no longer see it as a failure or weakness. You recognize it as a natural response that passes through awareness like any other sensation. You allow it to arise without feeding it. You do not suppress it, but you do not obey it. This relationship with fear is one of the highest forms of freedom Buddhism describes. Another transformation happens in how you relate to life itself. You stop seeing life as something that must protect you. You stop expecting it to always feel fair or gentle. Instead, you develop respect for life's intelligence. You see that difficulty often arrives to refine you, not to destroy you. Bad days become meaningful rather than threatening. This shift removes existential fear, the fear that life is hostile or meaningless. As fear dissolves, courage appears naturally, not dramatic courage, but quiet steadiness. You speak honestly, you set boundaries calmly, you move forward even when outcomes are uncertain. Buddhism teaches that this courage is not built by forcing confidence. It emerges when fear no longer controls the mind. Bad days are where this courage is forged slowly and authentically. Bad days also teach you how to let go of the fear of bad days themselves. You stop bracing for the next difficult moment. You stop living in anticipation of suffering. You know that when difficulty comes, you will meet it. This ends the cycle of anxiety that comes from constantly preparing for pain. Buddhism teaches that freedom is living without preoccupation with what might go wrong. Eventually, you reach a state where life feels lighter, not because it is always pleasant, but because you are no longer carrying fear into every experience. You are present, you are open. You are responsive rather than defensive. You live with curiosity instead of dread. This is not indifference, it is trust. The final teaching of bad days is this: they were training you for fearlessness. They were teaching you that pain does not mean destruction. They were showing you that uncertainty does not mean danger. They were proving that you can remain whole even when life feels unstable. When this understanding becomes stable, bad days lose their emotional charge completely. They arrive, and you remain grounded. They pass, and nothing is damaged inside you. You no longer ask why this is happening. You no longer resist. You stay present. You learn. You move on. This is freedom in the Buddhist sense, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from fear. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from suffering. Not freedom from change, but freedom from clinging. Bad days completed this journey. They removed illusion. They dissolved dependency. They weakened identity. They ended inner conflict. They freed you from fear. And once fear is gone, life no longer feels like something you must survive. It feels like something you are awake within. You live calmly, you move gently, you meet each day without resistance. This is the final gift of bad days. They lead you to a life where nothing needs to be avoided, nothing needs to be feared, and nothing needs to be controlled for you to be at peace. 16. Bad days teach you how to live naturally without struggle or force. Buddhism teaches that after fear dissolves, after attachment weakens, and after inner conflict fades, there is still one final habit the mind must release. This habit is effortful living. Effortful living means constantly trying to manage yourself, fix yourself, improve yourself, or hold yourself together. Even on a spiritual path, many people unknowingly turn growth into pressure. They try to be calm, they try to be wise, they try to stay balanced. Bad days arrive at this stage not to challenge you anymore, but to show you that even effort itself can become a form of tension. On earlier stages of the journey, effort feels necessary. You practice awareness, you practice acceptance, you practice letting go. But Buddhism teaches that if effort never softens, it eventually becomes another subtle prison. The mind starts judging itself for not being peaceful enough, not mindful enough, not awakened enough. Bad days appear at this stage as moments where effort collapses. You are too tired to try, too empty to manage, too honest to pretend. And in that collapse, a deeper truth is revealed. Life does not require your constant management to unfold correctly. On a bad day at this level, you may notice that all strategies fail. Positive thinking feels fake. Control feels impossible. Spiritual techniques feel distant. At first, the mind panics because it has lost its tools. But Buddhism teaches that this loss is intentional. When tools fall away, what remains is natural awareness, not practiced awareness. Not forced calm, just simple presence. Bad days strip effort until only what is real remains. As you stay present without trying to improve the moment, something unexpected happens. Peace appears on its own, not excitement, not happiness, just a quiet okayness. You are not fixing anything. You are not achieving anything. You are simply existing. Buddhism teaches that this is natural peace. It does not come from effort. It comes from the absence of interference. Bad days teach you this because they remove the illusion that effort creates peace. They show you that peace was never something you had to build. It was something you were constantly disturbing by trying too hard. When effort drops, peace reveals itself quietly, without drama. At this stage, you begin to live more naturally. You stop monitoring your inner state constantly. You stop asking whether you are doing things right. You stop measuring progress. Buddhism teaches that awakening matures when self-monitoring ends. Bad days help end this habit by making self-monitoring impossible. You are too present to analyze, too grounded to overthink. Another transformation happens in how you relate to mistakes. Earlier, mistakes felt like lessons. Now they feel like movements of life. You no longer turn every difficulty into a teaching moment. You allow things to happen without extracting meaning from them. Buddhism teaches that not everything needs interpretation. Some experiences simply pass. Bad days teach you to let life flow without commentary. This brings deep relaxation into your nervous system. You are no longer bracing against life. You are no longer trying to stay ahead of it. You move with it. When energy is low, you rest. When clarity appears, you act. When confusion arises, you wait. Buddhism teaches that this responsiveness is wisdom. It is living in harmony with conditions rather than forcing consistency. Bad days also dissolve the last layer of resistance toward discomfort. Earlier, you accepted discomfort. Now, you do not even label it. It is simply part of the moment. Pain may arise, but it does not demand attention. It does not dominate awareness. This is not numbness. It is intimacy without obsession. Buddhism teaches that suffering ends when discomfort is allowed to exist without being made central. At this level, your relationship with time changes completely. You stop rushing to get past bad days. You stop hoping for better ones. Each day is experienced fully, without comparison. Buddhism teaches that when time is no longer used as an escape, presence deepens naturally. Bad days teach you this by removing the desire to rush forward. You may also notice that spiritual language becomes less important. You stop labeling experiences as growth, healing, or awakening. Life becomes simple again. You eat when hungry, you rest when tired. You speak when needed. Buddhism teaches that simplicity is the sign of deep understanding. Bad days remove complexity by exhausting the mind's need to explain everything. Another quiet shift happens in how you relate to others. You stop trying to be understood. You stop trying to guide or correct. You allow people to be where they are. This is not indifference. It is respect. Buddhism teaches that when inner struggle ends, you stop projecting struggle onto others. Bad days soften the need to control even relationships. At this stage, gratitude becomes very quiet. You are no longer grateful because something good happened. You are grateful because nothing needs to happen. Life itself feels sufficient. Even bad days feel complete. Buddhism teaches that this contentment is not excitement. It is peace without conditions. Bad days now serve a different purpose. They keep you humble. They remind you not to turn peace into identity. They prevent spiritual pride. They ensure that simplicity remains intact. Each time a bad day appears, it gently dissolves any remaining rigidity. Eventually, you may realize that you no longer categorize days at all. Days are just days. Experiences come and go. You remain present. There is no struggle to accept, no effort to let go, no fear to overcome. Buddhism teaches that this is natural living, life flowing through awareness without obstruction. The final teaching of bad days at this stage is subtle but profound. You do not need to do anything to be free. You only needed to stop interfering. Bad days were removing interference layer by layer. They removed resistance. They removed attachment. They removed fear. They removed effort. What remains is life lived simply, honestly, and quietly. You wake up. You live. You rest. You respond. Nothing is forced. Nothing is avoided. Nothing is dramatized. This is why Buddhism does not promise extraordinary experiences. It points to ordinary life lived without struggle. Bad days guided you here by exhausting every false way of living until only the natural way remained. When you live this way, peace is not something you notice. It is something you stop disturbing, and that is the final maturity bad days offer. 17. Bad days teach you how to live simply, humbly, and at peace with life as it is. Buddhism teaches that when the mind has passed through fear, attachment, identity, effort, and control, what remains is simplicity. Not simplicity as an idea, but simplicity as a way of being. Bad days play a crucial role in guiding you to this state because they quietly remove everything unnecessary. They strip life down to its essentials until only what truly matters remains. At this stage, bad days no longer feel like lessons you must understand. They feel like gentle reminders to stay simple, honest, and grounded. Most people complicate life without realizing it. They complicate their thoughts, their emotions, their goals, their identities, and even their spirituality. They carry invisible burdens created by expectations, comparisons, plans, regrets, and imagined futures. On earlier stages of the path, bad days challenged these burdens forcefully. Now, bad days dissolve them softly. They do not shake you, they simplify you. On a bad day at this level, you may feel quiet rather than disturbed. There may be low energy, silence, or stillness, but there is no inner drama. The mind does not rush to label the day as good or bad. It does not demand explanation. Buddhism teaches that this is a sign of maturity. You are no longer trying to extract meaning from every experience. You trust life enough to let moments pass without interpretation. Bad days now teach humility in the most natural way. You stop believing you are above difficulty. You stop thinking you have reached a final state. Buddhism teaches that true wisdom is humble because it understands impermanence deeply. Bad days appear to remind you that awareness stays open and flexible. There is no pride in peace. There is no identity in calmness. You simply live. At this stage, your relationship with the mind becomes very gentle. Thoughts arise, but you do not wrestle with them. You do not analyze them. You do not follow them. They move through awareness like clouds in the sky. Buddhism teaches that the mind no longer needs management when awareness is stable. Bad days reinforce this by showing you that even uncomfortable thoughts lose power when they are not resisted. Another deep transformation happens in how you relate to meaning. Earlier, you searched for purpose, lessons, and direction. Now, meaning is not something you chase. It is something you live quietly. You find meaning in breathing, walking, listening, eating, and resting. Buddhism teaches that when the mind stops searching for significance, life itself becomes significant. Bad days support this shift by removing excitement and leaving simplicity. Bad days also teach you how to live without emotional extremes. Happiness no longer excites you excessively. Sadness no longer frightens you. Emotions are experienced fully, but lightly. Buddhism teaches that this balance is not detachment from life, but intimacy without clinging. Bad days show you that emotional neutrality does not mean emptiness. It means spaciousness. As simplicity deepens, your desires change. You want less, but feel more content. You seek less stimulation, but feel more alive. You speak less, but your words carry clarity. Buddhism teaches that desire softens naturally when attachment dissolves. Bad days gently encourage this by making excess feel unnecessary. At this stage, you no longer try to optimize life. You stop trying to make every day productive, meaningful, or special. You allow ordinary days to be ordinary. Buddhism teaches that freedom is not found in extraordinary experiences, but in ordinary moments lived without resistance. Bad days bring you back to this ordinariness by removing expectations. Another subtle shift occurs in how you relate to suffering in others. You no longer rush to fix, you no longer judge. You simply remain present. Your presence itself becomes calming. Buddhism teaches that when inner struggle ends, compassion becomes effortless. Bad days soften you enough to sit with pain without needing to escape it. Bad days also teach you how to live without comparison. You stop measuring your life against others. You stop wondering whether you are ahead or behind. Buddhism teaches that comparison exists only when identity is strong. When simplicity remains, each life is allowed to unfold in its own rhythm. Bad days keep you grounded in your own path. At this level, peace feels very ordinary. There are no dramatic insights, no emotional highs, no sense of achievement. Buddhism teaches that this ordinariness is the highest form of peace. It does not come and go. It does not depend on conditions. It is woven into daily life. Bad days confirm this by showing you that peace remains even when nothing feels special. You may also notice that your relationship with silence changes. Silence is no longer uncomfortable, it is nourishing. Bad days often bring quietness, fewer words, fewer desires. Buddhism teaches that silence reveals truth without explanation. You do not need to understand everything. You simply need to be present. Another important transformation happens in how you relate to time. You stop living in anticipation. You stop waiting for better days. Each day is complete in itself. Buddhism teaches that when hope and fear dissolve, time loses its emotional charge. Bad days teach this by removing the desire to escape into tomorrow. At this stage, even the idea of spiritual progress fades. You are not becoming anything. You are not moving toward a goal. You are living. Buddhism teaches that awakening is not an achievement. It is the absence of striving. Bad days remove striving until only life remains. Eventually, you may realize that nothing is missing. Even on quiet, heavy, or uneventful days, there is no sense of lack. You are not waiting for life to begin. You are already in it. Buddhism teaches that this feeling of completeness is not created. It appears when desire ends. The final role of bad days at this stage is simple. They keep you honest. They prevent spiritual attachment. They remind you to stay human. They ensure that peace stays flexible rather than rigid. Bad days no longer teach you through pain. They teach you through simplicity. They whisper instead of shout. They slow you instead of break you. You live quietly. You move gently. You accept naturally. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. This is the final maturity bad days bring. A life lived without resistance, without pride, without fear, and without excess. Buddhism teaches that when life becomes this simple, suffering has no place to land, and bad days, having completed their work, become just another expression of life, moving freely through awareness. 18. Bad days teach you complete trust in life, without resistance or doubt. Buddhism teaches that after fear dissolves, after identity softens, after effort relaxes, and after simplicity becomes natural, there remains one final inner movement that must settle. This movement is distrust in life. Distrust does not always appear as fear. Often, it appears as subtle doubt, quiet resistance, or the feeling that life must still prove itself before you fully relax. Bad days arrive at this stage, not to disturb you, but to complete the process of trust. Most people believe trust means believing things will turn out well. Buddhism teaches something far deeper. True trust is not confidence in outcomes, it is peace in uncertainty. It is the ability to remain open even when you do not understand what is happening. Bad days are essential here because they remove predictability. They deny explanations. They do not offer reassurance. And in doing so, they invite you into a deeper relationship with life itself. On a bad day at this level, there may be no dramatic emotion. There may simply be heaviness, slowness, or quiet confusion. The mind may look for meaning, but nothing appears. Buddhism teaches that this is intentional. Life is no longer teaching through contrast or intensity. It is teaching through absence. It is asking whether you can remain present without answers. At first, the mind may still try to negotiate. It may ask when clarity will return, when energy will come back, or when direction will reappear. But as awareness deepens, these questions soften. You stop demanding reassurance. You stop needing confirmation that things are okay. You begin to experience a gentle trust that does not depend on understanding. Buddhism teaches that this trust is the deepest form of peace. Bad days at this stage show you that life does not owe you clarity. It does not owe you motivation. It does not owe you explanation. And yet, even without these things, existence continues smoothly. Breath continues. The body moves. Awareness remains. This realization dissolves the final layer of resistance. You stop asking life to behave differently. You allow it to unfold in its own intelligence. As this trust settles, something profound happens in your nervous system. The background tension you carried for years begins to fade. You are no longer bracing for something to go wrong. You are no longer waiting for the next problem. Buddhism teaches that this constant bracing is the root of anxiety. Bad days remove it by proving that even when things feel off, nothing essential collapses. Another subtle transformation happens in how you relate to uncertainty. Earlier, uncertainty felt uncomfortable but manageable. Now, uncertainty feels natural. You stop seeing it as a gap that must be filled. You allow it to exist as part of life's movement. Buddhism teaches that when uncertainty is accepted fully, curiosity replaces fear. You become open rather than defensive. Bad days cultivate this openness by removing the desire to know what comes next. Bad days also dissolve the last remnants of control disguised as wisdom. Even after much growth, the mind may still believe it understands how life should unfold. Bad days gently break this belief. They remind you that life is always larger than concepts. Buddhism teaches that wisdom is not knowing what will happen. It is being available to whatever happens. Bad days refine this availability. As trust deepens, your relationship with action changes. You no longer act to secure outcomes. You act because action is appropriate in the moment. When nothing is needed, you rest. When movement is needed, you move. Buddhism teaches that this responsiveness is trust in motion. Bad days help establish this by removing the urge to force progress. Another shift occurs in how you relate to silence. Silence is no longer empty, it is full. Bad days often bring quietness, fewer thoughts, fewer emotions. Instead of feeling bored or lost, you feel settled. Buddhism teaches that silence reveals trust because the mind no longer needs noise to feel safe. Bad days also show you that trust is not passive. It is deeply alive. You still respond to life. You still care. You still engage. But there is no inner argument, no hidden resentment, no feeling that life is doing something wrong. Buddhism teaches that this absence of inner complaint is liberation. At this stage, gratitude becomes very subtle. You are no longer grateful because something good happened. You are grateful because nothing needs to happen. Existence itself feels sufficient. Even on dull, heavy, or unclear days, there is no sense of lack. Bad days teach this by removing stimulation and leaving presence. You may also notice that your relationship with difficulty becomes almost tender. When discomfort arises, there is no rejection. There is patience. There is space. Buddhism teaches that when trust is complete, even pain is allowed to exist without resistance. This does not mean pain is enjoyed. It means pain is not fought. And without a fight, suffering has nowhere to grow. Another important transformation is the end of spiritual impatience. You stop wanting to be somewhere else on the path. You stop waiting for a final state. Buddhism teaches that impatience is a form of distrust in the present. Bad days dissolve impatience by making waiting unavoidable. When waiting is accepted, trust deepens naturally. As trust stabilizes, your sense of self becomes very light. You no longer feel like a separate entity navigating life. You feel like part of a larger movement. Buddhism teaches that this is non-separation. Life is not happening to you, it is happening as you. Bad days make this clear by dissolving the sense of opposition between you and experience. Eventually, even the label bad day loses meaning. Days are simply expressions of conditions. Some are slow, some are heavy, some are clear, none are wrong. Buddhism teaches that this view is not philosophical, it is lived. Bad days mature this view by exhausting judgment. The final teaching of bad days at this stage is quiet but complete. Life does not need to be trusted because it has earned trust. It is trusted because resistance has ended. You no longer require proof that things will be okay. You are okay within whatever appears. When bad days arrive now, they do not challenge your peace. They deepen it. They remind you that trust is not something you practice. It is something that remains when nothing is being held back. You stay present. You stay open. You stay relaxed within uncertainty. Nothing is forced. Nothing is avoided. Nothing is doubted. This is complete trust in life. Not blind belief, not optimism, but a deep, grounded knowing that whatever unfolds can be met without resistance. Buddhism teaches that when trust becomes this natural, suffering no longer finds a place to stand. And bad days, having fulfilled their final role, become simply another rhythm of life flowing freely through awareness. 19. Bad days teach you how to be present even when life makes no sense. Buddhism teaches that one of the last attachments the mind holds onto is the need for life to make sense. Most people believe peace will arrive once they understand what is happening, why it is happening, and where it is leading. The mind constantly seeks explanations, patterns, lessons, and reasons. When understanding is present, the mind feels safe. When understanding disappears, discomfort arises. Bad days exist to slowly loosen this dependency on meaning and show you a deeper kind of peace that does not require explanation. On earlier stages of the path, bad days challenged your emotions, your identity, your fear, and your effort. Now, bad days challenge something much quieter. They challenge your need for clarity. You may wake up on a day where nothing feels wrong, yet nothing feels right. There is no obvious lesson, no dramatic pain, no clear direction. The mind searches for answers and finds none. Buddhism teaches that this is not confusion. It is an invitation to remain present without mental resolution. The mind has been trained to believe that understanding equals control. When you understand something, you feel prepared. When you do not, you feel exposed. Bad days at this stage remove the sense of being prepared. They leave you standing in the moment without a story. At first, this feels uncomfortable. The mind wants to label the day, define it, and place it somewhere familiar. Buddhism teaches that resisting this urge is where deep peace begins. When you stay with a bad day that makes no sense, something important happens. The mind slowly gives up searching, not because it found an answer, but because searching becomes exhausting. When searching stops, presence becomes clear. You are no longer trying to figure out life. You are simply experiencing it. Buddhism teaches that this shift marks the movement from conceptual understanding to direct awareness. Bad days teach you that life does not need to be interpreted to be lived. You can breathe without knowing why the breath rises. You can walk without understanding where each step will lead. You can feel without labeling the feeling. This realization brings immense relief. The mind relaxes because it no longer has to carry the burden of constant explanation. As this understanding deepens, you begin to notice how much suffering came from mental storytelling. The mind was always trying to connect dots, predict outcomes, or extract lessons prematurely. Bad days interrupt this habit by offering no narrative. There is nothing to analyze, nothing to solve, nothing to learn in words. Buddhism teaches that when stories dissolve, reality becomes simple again. Bad days also reveal that meaning is often something the mind creates after the fact. Many experiences only make sense in hindsight. Trying to force meaning in the present moment creates tension. Buddhism teaches that wisdom includes knowing when not to understand. Bad days train you in this wisdom by removing clarity and asking you to remain open anyway. As you practice staying present without understanding, fear begins to disappear. Fear thrives on uncertainty only when the mind believes it must know. When you stop requiring certainty, uncertainty loses its threat. You stop asking what this day means for your future. You stop wondering whether you are moving forward or backward. You remain where you are. Buddhism teaches that this grounded presence is freedom from mental time travel. Another transformation happens in how you relate to questions. Earlier, questions felt urgent. Now, they feel optional. You no longer need to answer everything immediately. Some questions dissolve on their own when you stop feeding them. Bad days teach you patience with the unknown. You allow life to reveal itself slowly rather than demanding instant clarity. Bad days also soften your relationship with doubt. Doubt is no longer an enemy. It is simply the absence of certainty. Buddhism teaches that certainty is often an illusion created by thought. Bad days strip this illusion away and leave you with direct experience. You discover that you can function, respond, and live even when certainty is absent. This discovery is deeply empowering. At this stage, your trust in presence becomes complete. You trust that being aware in the moment is enough. You do not need to know what comes next. You do not need to label the day as good or bad. You are content to experience what is happening without resistance. Buddhism teaches that this contentment is not apathy. It is openness without fear. Bad days also teach you humility toward life's mystery. You stop assuming that everything is meant to be understood by the mind. You respect that life is vast, complex, and often beyond explanation. This humility creates peace because it removes the pressure to figure everything out. As this realization stabilizes, your inner dialogue becomes very quiet. There is less commentary, less interpretation, less judgment. You spend more time simply noticing. Buddhism teaches that when the mind stops talking about life, life feels more alive. Bad days facilitate this by reducing mental noise. Another subtle shift occurs in how you experience time. When you stop trying to understand the day, time slows down. Moments feel fuller. You are not rushing toward clarity. You are inhabiting the present. Buddhism teaches that this is where peace actually exists, not in answers, but in awareness. Bad days now serve a final purpose. They remind you that peace does not come from insight alone. It comes from presence without condition. Even when nothing makes sense, awareness remains steady. This steadiness becomes your home. Eventually, you may notice that even the desire for spiritual explanation fades. You are no longer interested in defining your experience. You live it. Buddhism teaches that this is the maturity of the path. Understanding has done its work and can now rest. When bad days arrive now, they do not disturb you. They simply remove the temptation to explain. You remain present. You breathe. You live. You do not ask why. You do not demand meaning. You do not resist confusion. You stay. This is the final gift of bad days at this stage. They teach you how to be fully alive without needing life to make sense. They free you from the burden of understanding and return you to simple awareness. Buddhism teaches that when presence is complete, suffering has nowhere to hide. And bad days, having removed the final attachment to explanation, leave you resting in a peace that does not depend on answers, clarity, or certainty, only on being here, exactly as you are. 20. Bad days teach you how to stop resisting life and live in natural peace. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not end when pain disappears. Suffering ends when resistance disappears. Resistance is the subtle habit of pushing against life, correcting it, arguing with it, or wishing it were different. Even after fear fades, identity dissolves, trust deepens, and understanding matures, the mind may still resist quietly. It may not resist loudly with anger or panic, but subtly with preference, comparison, or expectation. Bad days arrive at this final stage to dissolve resistance completely and return you to natural peace. Natural peace is not something you create. It is what remains when you stop interfering with the moment. Most people believe peace comes from arranging life correctly. Buddhism teaches the opposite. Peace comes from allowing life to unfold without inner opposition. Bad days are essential here because they make resistance visible. On a bad day, the mind instinctively wants the day to end, improve, or make sense. When none of that happens, resistance exhausts itself, and when resistance ends, peace reveals itself quietly. At this stage, bad days no longer feel dramatic. They feel slow, heavy, or empty. There may be low energy, dullness, or stillness. The mind may initially label this as something wrong, but Buddhism teaches that this is not wrongness. It is life moving without decoration. When you stop trying to decorate experience with positivity, meaning, or urgency, you encounter life as it truly is. Resistance often hides behind subtle preferences. You may prefer clarity over confusion, energy over fatigue, motivation over stillness. Buddhism teaches that preference itself creates tension. Bad days remove preferred states and leave you with what is. When you remain present without wishing the moment away, resistance weakens naturally. As resistance dissolves, your relationship with discomfort changes completely. Discomfort is no longer a problem to solve. It is simply a sensation passing through awareness. You do not welcome it. You do not reject it. You allow it. Buddhism teaches that when allowance replaces resistance, discomfort loses its sharpness. Pain may remain, but suffering does not grow. Bad days also dissolve the last need to manage yourself. Earlier, you learned how to regulate emotions, thoughts, and reactions. Now, regulation softens into trust. You no longer monitor your inner state. You no longer correct yourself for feeling a certain way. You let the mind be as it is. Buddhism teaches that self-management ends when self-trust becomes complete. Bad days help finalize this trust by showing you that nothing needs fixing. Another important transformation occurs in how you relate to effort. Earlier, effort softened. Now, effort disappears entirely. You no longer try to accept. You no longer try to let go. Acceptance and letting go happen automatically because resistance is gone. Buddhism teaches that effortlessness is not laziness, it is alignment. Bad days teach this by making effort impossible. As effort fades, life becomes very simple. You respond to what is in front of you. You eat when hungry. You rest when tired. You act when action is needed. There is no inner debate. Buddhism teaches that wisdom at this stage is not intellectual, it is functional. It shows up as appropriate response without overthinking. Bad days also teach you how to stop negotiating with reality. Earlier, the mind may have said, "I will accept this if it changes soon," or "I will trust life if I understand later." Now, even these negotiations disappear. You accept without condition. You trust without proof. Buddhism teaches that unconditional acceptance is freedom from psychological bargaining. As this acceptance stabilizes, the sense of being separate from life dissolves completely. You no longer feel like a person facing life. You feel like life expressing itself through you. Buddhism teaches that this is non-duality. There is no longer a gap between experience and awareness. Bad days mature this understanding by removing the illusion that there is something to fight against. Another subtle shift occurs in how you relate to pleasure. You enjoy it when it comes, but you do not hold on to it. You do not fear losing it. Bad days remind you that peace is not dependent on pleasant states. When pleasure passes, nothing collapses inside you. Buddhism teaches that this freedom from clinging is true enjoyment. Bad days also teach you how to live without anticipation. You stop waiting for better days. You stop hoping tomorrow will feel different. Each day stands on its own. Buddhism teaches that anticipation is another form of resistance because it rejects the present in favor of an imagined future. Bad days dissolve anticipation by making waiting unnecessary. As resistance ends, your nervous system relaxes deeply. There is no background tension, no readiness to fight or flee. You feel settled in your body. Buddhism teaches that the body mirrors the mind. When the mind stops resisting, the body rests naturally. At this stage, peace feels almost invisible. It is not an experience you notice, it is the absence of disturbance. Buddhism teaches that true peace is so ordinary that it is often overlooked. Bad days teach you this by removing excitement and leaving stillness. Another final transformation occurs in how you relate to life's unpredictability. You no longer brace for change. You no longer fear disruption. You allow life to surprise you. Buddhism teaches that openness to unpredictability is freedom. Bad days finalize this openness by proving that unpredictability does not harm you. Eventually, even the idea of bad day dissolves. Days are simply expressions of conditions. Some are light, some are heavy. None are personal. None require resistance. Buddhism teaches that this is the end of psychological suffering. Life continues, but inner struggle does not. The final teaching of bad days is simple and complete. They were never meant to improve you. They were meant to free you from resistance. They showed you that peace is not something you must reach. It is something you stop blocking. When resistance ends, peace remains. You live without inner opposition. You respond without struggle. You exist without tension. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. This is natural peace. Bad days completed their work by bringing you here to a life lived without resistance, where awareness flows freely and peace is no longer a goal, but the ground of your existence. 21. Bad days teach you how to feel at home in life without needing it to change. Buddhism teaches that the deepest peace a human being can know is the feeling of being at home in existence. Not at home because life is comfortable, successful, or predictable, but at home because there is no longer any inner distance between you and what is happening. Most suffering comes from feeling misplaced in life, as if you are standing on the wrong ground, waiting for conditions to improve so you can finally relax. Bad days exist to dissolve this feeling of exile and gently return you to where you have always been. For most of life, the mind believes home is somewhere else. It believes home is in the future, after problems are solved. It believes home is in better moods, better circumstances, or clearer understanding. Even spiritual effort can become a search for home elsewhere. Buddhism teaches that this search itself creates restlessness. Bad days interrupt the search by removing the idea that you can go anywhere else. When escape is unavailable, presence becomes unavoidable. On a bad day at this stage, there may be nothing dramatic. The day may feel slow, dull, or emotionally flat. There may be no inspiration and no clarity. Earlier, such days felt like something was missing. Now, something different happens. You remain. You do not leave the moment emotionally. You do not imagine another version of the day. You stay where you are. Buddhism teaches that this staying is the beginning of home. Bad days teach you that home is not a feeling you create. It is a relationship you stop breaking. Each time the mind says this moment is not enough, it steps away from home. Each time you resist what is present, you create distance. Bad days bring this habit into focus by making dissatisfaction obvious. When you stop following dissatisfaction, you return naturally. As this understanding deepens, the sense of being a separate observer of life fades. You no longer feel like someone standing outside experience, evaluating it. You feel inside life, moving with it. Buddhism teaches that this intimacy with experience is the end of alienation. Bad days finalize this intimacy by removing the last desire to stand apart. At this stage, bad days no longer teach through discomfort. They teach through belonging. Even when the body is tired or the mind is quiet, there is no sense of rejection. You feel included in the moment. You belong to the day exactly as it is. Buddhism teaches that this belonging is not emotional warmth. It is acceptance without condition. Another subtle shift occurs in how you relate to imperfection. Earlier, imperfection felt like something to accept. Now, it feels natural. You no longer compare the day to an ideal version. You do not see flaws as problems. Buddhism teaches that when comparison ends, perfection loses meaning. Life is allowed to be uneven, incomplete, and ordinary. Bad days reinforce this by refusing to be polished. Bad days also teach you how to live without anticipation of arrival. You are no longer moving toward peace. You are living from it. There is no sense that something essential will happen later. Buddhism teaches that this absence of arrival is liberation. When there is nowhere to get to, the present becomes sufficient. As this integration stabilizes, your relationship with effort disappears completely. You do not try to stay present. You are present because there is no alternative. You do not practice acceptance. Acceptance is simply how life is met. Bad days ensure this by removing motivation and replacing it with simplicity. Another important transformation happens in how you relate to meaning. Meaning is no longer extracted from experiences. It is inherent in being alive. You do not ask what the day is for. You live it. Buddhism teaches that when the question of purpose dissolves, purpose becomes embodied. Bad days support this embodiment by offering nothing to analyze. Bad days also teach you how to rest inside movement. Even when life is busy or difficult, there is an inner stillness that does not disappear. This stillness is not something you create. It is what remains when resistance is gone. Buddhism teaches that true rest is not the absence of activity, but the absence of inner opposition. At this stage, your relationship with the self becomes almost transparent. You do not feel like a solid identity navigating life. You feel like a function of life itself. You respond, move, speak, and rest naturally. Buddhism teaches that this is non-doing, not inactivity, but action without self-consciousness. Bad days mature this by dissolving the need to define yourself. Another subtle shift occurs in how you experience emotions. Emotions still arise, but they feel intimate rather than intrusive. Sadness is allowed to be present without story. Joy is allowed without grasping. Neutrality is allowed without boredom. Buddhism teaches that this emotional intimacy is freedom from emotional ownership. Bad days also complete your relationship with vulnerability. You no longer protect yourself from feeling exposed. You allow life to touch you. Buddhism teaches that vulnerability without fear is openness. Bad days teach this by removing emotional armor. At this level, even spiritual language begins to feel unnecessary. You do not need to name what you are experiencing. You live it. Buddhism teaches that when understanding becomes embodied, words fall away. Bad days support this embodiment by making explanation irrelevant. Another transformation happens in how you relate to others. You no longer feel separate. You do not compare paths. You do not measure progress. You meet people where they are without distance. Buddhism teaches that when you feel at home in yourself, you recognize home in others. Bad days also teach you how to stop seeking refuge outside the moment. Earlier, refuge came from ideas, teachings, or practices. Now, refuge is the moment itself. Buddhism teaches that this is the highest refuge. Bad days finalize this by removing all external supports. Eventually, even the sense of being on a path dissolves. There is no journey, there is no destination, there is only life unfolding. Buddhism teaches that awakening is the end of searching. Bad days make this clear by exhausting every desire to go elsewhere. The final gift of bad days at this stage is simple and complete. They teach you that you were never meant to escape life. You were meant to belong to it. They remove the feeling of exile and return you to ordinary existence lived without distance. You wake up and the day is as it is. You live it without argument. You rest when needed. You act when appropriate. Nothing feels missing. This is home. Bad days did not bring you here by force. They brought you here by removing everything that told you you were not already here. And when that removal is complete, life is no longer something you endure or improve. It is something you inhabit fully, quietly, and without resistance. 22. Bad days teach you how to live free from the past and future. Buddhism teaches that most human suffering does not come from what is happening now. It comes from what the mind carries from the past and projects into the future. Regret, guilt, memories, and self-judgment pull the mind backward, while fear, worry, hope, and anticipation pull it forward. The present moment becomes small and fragile, constantly overshadowed by what was or what might be. Bad days exist to break this habit and gently return you to the only place where life actually happens, which is now. On good days, the mind easily escapes into time. It revisits pleasant memories or imagines a better future. This escape feels harmless, even enjoyable, but on bad days, time becomes heavy. The mind replays painful moments, mistakes, losses, and missed opportunities. It also projects fear into the future, imagining that today's difficulty will last forever or lead to something worse. Buddhism teaches that this movement through time is the true source of suffering. The bad day itself is only a trigger. Bad days make the weight of time visible. When you are struggling, you feel how exhausting it is to carry the past and future at the same time. You realize how much energy is spent remembering, comparing, worrying, and predicting. Buddhism teaches that this exhaustion is not accidental. It is meant to wake you up to how unnecessary this burden is. When the mind becomes too tired to carry time, it naturally drops into the present. At first, this dropping feels uncomfortable. Without stories of the past or plans for the future, the mind feels exposed. It may feel empty or directionless. But Buddhism teaches that this emptiness is not loss. It is relief. It is the absence of mental noise. Bad days create this space by making mental escape impossible. When escape ends, presence begins. As you stay with a bad day without feeding past or future, something surprising happens. The present moment reveals itself as manageable. Even if there is discomfort, it is limited. It has shape, sensation, and movement. It is not infinite. The mind begins to see that most suffering came from mental time travel, not from the moment itself. Buddhism teaches that when attention stays with what is actually happening, suffering loses its intensity. Bad days teach you this lesson repeatedly. Each time the mind runs to the past, it increases pain. Each time it jumps to the future, it creates fear. When you notice this pattern, you begin to choose differently. You return attention to the body, to breath, to simple awareness, not as a technique, but as a necessity. The present becomes a refuge, not because it is pleasant, but because it is real. Over time, the grip of the past begins to loosen. Memories still appear, but they no longer dominate awareness. You stop reliving old pain as if it is happening now. You see memories as images, not identities. Buddhism teaches that when memory is seen clearly, it loses the power to define you. Bad days help this happen by making the cost of clinging to the past obvious. The future also loses its emotional charge. You still plan when needed, but you no longer live inside imagination. You stop fearing what has not arrived. You stop postponing peace for a later time. Buddhism teaches that the future is a mental construction. Bad days collapse this construction by showing you that peace cannot be found in what does not exist yet. As this understanding deepens, your relationship with time changes completely. Time becomes practical instead of psychological. You use memory to learn, not to punish yourself. You use planning to function, not to worry. The present moment becomes the place where you actually live. Buddhism teaches that this shift is liberation from mental time. Bad days also teach you how to forgive yourself naturally. When the past loses power, self-blame fades. You stop replaying mistakes as evidence of who you are. You see them as events that passed. Buddhism teaches that forgiveness is not something you force. It happens when the past is no longer carried into the present. Bad days accelerate this by making the weight of self-judgment unbearable. Another important transformation occurs in how you experience hope. Earlier, hope was tied to the future. Now, hope becomes quiet, trust in the present. You no longer hope that things will be different later. You trust that you can meet whatever is here now. Buddhism teaches that this trust is stronger than hope because it does not depend on outcomes. Bad days also dissolve impatience. When the mind stops living in the future, there is no rush to get somewhere else. You stop asking when this phase will end. You stay with what is unfolding. Buddhism teaches that patience is not waiting for change. It is living fully without demanding it. Bad days cultivate this patience by removing the desire to escape time. As time loosens its grip, anxiety weakens. Anxiety always lives in the future. When the future loses importance, anxiety has nowhere to exist. You may still feel concern, but it does not spiral. You remain grounded. Buddhism teaches that grounding happens naturally when attention stays present. Bad days also teach you how to experience grief without drowning in it. Grief often pulls the mind into the past. When you learn to stay present, grief becomes something you feel now rather than something you relive endlessly. This makes grief softer, more humane, and less overwhelming. Buddhism teaches that presence allows grief to move instead of stagnate. At this stage, your sense of self becomes anchored in awareness rather than history. You no longer define yourself by what happened to you. You define yourself by what is happening now. Buddhism teaches that identity rooted in awareness is flexible and free. Bad days mature this identity by dissolving attachment to old stories. Another subtle shift occurs in how you experience joy. Joy becomes simple and immediate. You no longer wait for future achievements to feel alive. A breath, a quiet moment, or a simple action becomes enough. Buddhism teaches that joy in the present is deeper than excitement about the future. Bad days reveal this by removing anticipation. Eventually, even the idea of progress through time fades. You are not becoming something later. You are living now. Buddhism teaches that awakening is not a future event. It is the end of postponement. Bad days make postponement impossible and return you to this truth. The final teaching of bad days at this stage is clear. Life does not happen in the past or future, it happens now. When you stop carrying time psychologically, suffering loses its foundation. Bad days brought you here by making the cost of living in time too heavy to continue. They showed you that the present moment is not something you visit, it is where you belong. You breathe now. You feel now. You live now. Nothing else is required. This is freedom from psychological time, and when time no longer controls the mind, peace becomes stable, natural, and deeply rooted in the simplicity of being here. After walking through all these teachings, one truth becomes very clear. Bad days were never the enemy of your life. They were the silent teachers guiding you home. Every moment of heaviness, confusion, loneliness, and stillness was not meant to break you, delay you, or punish you. It was shaping your awareness in ways comfort never could. At the beginning of this journey, bad days felt like mistakes. They felt like signs that something had gone wrong, but slowly, lesson by lesson, understanding replaced resistance. You saw that bad days are part of nature, that they reveal attachment, that they train the mind, that they teach solitude, humility, patience, and inner strength. You learned that they dissolve fear, identity, effort, control, and the need for life to make sense. You discovered that they free you from emotional dependency, psychological time, and inner conflict. And now, at the end of this journey, something profound settles inside you. You no longer see life as something you must fight, fix, or escape. You no longer measure your worth by how the day feels. You no longer postpone peace for a better future or punish yourself for the past. You are here, fully, quietly, naturally. Bad days taught you how to stop interfering with life. They showed you that peace was never missing. It was only hidden beneath resistance, fear, and expectation. When those layers fell away, peace did not arrive dramatically. It revealed itself softly, as the absence of struggle. You now understand that peace is not a feeling that comes and goes. It is the ground you stand on when you stop pushing against reality. You understand that awareness does not disappear on difficult days. It becomes clearer. You understand that nothing essential about you is damaged by discomfort. You remain whole through every experience. From this place, life feels different. Not perfect, not constantly happy, but honest, real, livable. You wake up and meet the day as it is. If it is light, you move lightly. If it is heavy, you move gently. If it is unclear, you wait. There is no argument with the moment. There is no inner violence. This is the quiet freedom Buddhism points to. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from suffering. Not freedom from bad days, but freedom from fearing them. So when the next bad day arrives, and it will, you will not panic. You will not ask why this is happening. You will not feel lost or broken. You will recognize the familiar teacher. You will slow down. You will breathe. You will allow the day to be what it is. And you will remain present, steady, and at peace within it. Bad days no longer take anything from you. They remind you of what cannot be taken. And this is the final teaching. You do not need life to be easy to be peaceful. You do not need clarity to be calm. You do not need happiness to be whole. You only need to stop resisting what is already here. When resistance ends, peace remains. This is what bad days were teaching you.